Welcome to the Rusted Garden Homestead. Happy New Year's, everybody. In January, a couple of days, we're going to be starting seeds indoors. Please subscribe. I'm going to show you how to grow just about everything you see here. Today, I want to talk about tomato plants. How can you grow them indoors for a shorter amount of time and still get really large transplants? It's an experiment with different size cells. That's a hint. And you can see the tomatoes are different sizes. Today is December 30th. These plants were started. The seeds were put in the ground, so to speak, into the starting mix on November 27th. So these guys are 4 weeks old in a couple of days. You can see real quick, the plants over here are larger, the plants over here are smaller. We're going to get in close. I'm going to explain to you why that is and how you can make a simple change, grow your tomato plants indoors for a shorter period of time, but get really nice large transplants. Remember, these are just about 4 weeks old. Tomato seeds will take anywhere from 5 to 7 days to germinate. These germinated pretty quickly, so we can consider this about 4 weeks of growth after germination. Before we get to the tomatoes, seed starting class is going to start in about a week. We're going to start with growing perennial flowers. You can save a lot of money. These are plants that I have ready for the video in about a week. Also going to cover growing greens indoors to harvest, growing herbs. Down at the bottom there we have radishes. These are plants that I'm growing indoors, but we're going to cover perennial flowers, herbs, regular herbs, cool weather crops, warm weather vegetables, how to start all of them indoors. The tomato plants that you see here are all the same variety. They're a red beefsteak. All started on, I just forgot the date, November 27th. All grown for the same amount of time. Same exact starting mix, watering schedule, fertilizing schedule, and if you follow me, I'll show you how to start these from seed in about a month or so, and we'll go over watering and fertilizing and all that. But the prop plants here were set up to really show you that growing in, and this is the trick, a larger size container will get you larger tomato plants much more quickly. Everything else is the same. These are the standard 6 cells that we often grow in, and they work great. However, the roots will get constrained in about 4 or 5 weeks. The plants are going to stay smaller. I'll show you up close the size of the plants. And you're going to have to pot them up. You might have to do extra work in putting them into larger containers. When you put them into larger containers, they have more root room. The plants grow bigger. Makes sense. The reason you may start in here is you don't have a lot of grow light space, so you're starting them in smaller containers. You're potting them up. Maybe you're moving the plants around, throughout the house or outside. Nothing wrong with this, but you are definitely going to have smaller plants. So what you learn from that is you don't have to start these 8-10 weeks early, and if you're going to keep them in these small containers, they're not going to get much bigger. So you're just spending more time tending to plants that aren't going to get larger. So if we come down to here, again, these are the standard 6 cells, and you can see the size of the tomato plants. I sell these at my seed shop. This is a medium 4, more soil space, and these plants are a little bit bigger. Let me move them over, and you can see, the size difference. Let's get it so you can see it better with the light. Maybe not a huge difference, but these are taller, I think a little bit stockier. And this would buy you some time too. You could keep them in here. Doesn't take up as much space as the larger tomato cells we'll get to in a second. And they are generally larger. Just wanted to put this angle in there so you can see the size of the plants. It really is a significant difference. Again, November 27th, December 30th, they were all started at the same time, taken care of the same way. Smaller cell to the right, medium cell in the middle, and you can see the size of the cells, equates to how much soil's in there, starting mix. And then the larger cells. You can really grow for a shorter period of time indoors if you just use the larger cells. And that means you don't have to grow these as long under the lights as you think. A lot of people, and in the past I've been talking about, growing them 8-10 weeks years ago. You can really grow tomato plants 4 weeks, 6 weeks under your grow lights. Get them acclimated to the sun, and get them in the garden. So when you're looking at this, you just don't want to start way too early in something like this. Once the tomato plants are about this size, they're not going to necessarily get much bigger. You can add in water-soluble fertilizer, which I do at a certain point, so that they stay green and grow. You could give them more nitrogen. These would get bigger. The problem is when you put these outside with a tiny little root ball, and then maybe you jacked up the nitrogen to get bigger plants, these plants are going to kind of sit there for several weeks until the root system gets large enough to support upper canopy growth. So not only do the roots being in larger containers now help you get longer or larger, stronger plants, they're going to help your transplants when they get into the ground. And these look pretty good, you know, for not even being really 5 weeks old. These are nice transplants and they could go right into the ground. When you get to the larger containers, which I prefer, and this is the large size, they're just stockier and they're bigger, and we'll do a comparison. Tomato plants or tomato seeds are going to germinate in, we're going to get rid of this one, they're going to germinate in anywhere from 5 to 7 days if your house temperature is 65 degrees Fahrenheit, 18.3 degrees Celsius, but they can germinate at different speeds. So you saw that little one that I just removed took a long time, you know, like 2 weeks longer to germinate for whatever reason. So if we come over, let's make this fair. Raise this to the same height. You can see that the plants on the right are much larger than the plants in the 6 cell. And if you look up from the top, you can just see, you know, how beautiful that plant is. And these aren't bad, but they are definitely, you know, much smaller when you compare them. And this is what I'm kind of going for. I don't have to pot them up. They stay in the same cell, obviously. You know, they are ready to go into the ground. This would be a great plant, a tomato plant to put in the ground. Nice large root system to support this. The right soil temperature outside, when that temperature, soil temperature is about 65 Fahrenheit, again 18.3 degrees Celsius, same indoor temperature as that top 4 inches of soil outside, these plants are going to take off. When you come over to the medium cell, they're not quite as tall, pretty close, and you can, you know, certainly grow in these. But the canopy again is wider. You know, this one looks pretty good. But you get the idea. If you go from small medium, large, you can see that the plants are just taller. So, and again, you don't have to use these cells. You could use containers. Let me show you. You can use yogurt containers. You could cut water bottles. You know, here is a small cell, more soil than the standard 6, and it's a nice large plant, you know, as tall as the medium ones right here. This is more, this might be like a small yogurt cup. Not much difference. Let me bring this up. Not much difference in size. And then you get to even a larger cup. This could be like, I don't know, a really large yogurt cup. This plant is probably the biggest, but to me it's not much different than the 6-pack here of the larger cells. And these plants look pretty good. Like if I raise this up, they're almost the same size. The difference being is I can fit 6 into a small corner of my flat, versus here probably I would only be able to fit 3 into the same space. So you're always thinking about the container size and how much space that you have under the grow lights. You know, generally speaking, I'm pretty satisfied with these large 6s. This is how I'm going to be growing a lot of my tomatoes for the season. Again, I'm starting way early. I wouldn't really start these until about the beginning of March, so that come mid-April or so, I have nice transplants about this size. And then the final look is I just want to show you something else with how you can start your tomato plants. One of the things I want to show you is that you don't have to pick up all these seed cells in flats. You can just use a foil container like this, and I started some tomato plants in there. Just another quick look, right to left, you can see smaller cell, medium cell, larger cell, and here is a flat, not a flat, well it's a flat, you know. You would put these containers into here, you would bottom water, you call it a flat. However, I'm using the baking tray to grow the tomato plants, and I will just get in here, with a knife and just cut out a square. Now, these are really nice looking tomato plants. They are thick, probably as thick if not thicker than any of the tomato plants I have started over here. When you look up from the top, this is a beautiful canopy, bigger than the one right here, larger than the ones in the 6 large cells. Broke off a branch here. But the key thing here is that there's a lot of room for the roots to stretch out, and they grew faster. What do I mean by that? The plants here were put in on November 27th. The plants here were put in on December 4th, about a week later, and they are already as big as, if not bigger, than the ones in the larger containers, larger 6-pack. And it's because they have the surface roots, or the root system themselves, just have more room to run out. You can see how small the peppers are. I'll be doing the same video for pepper plants. They just take longer. Pepper plants over here were started on the 27th. You can see the size that they are. And then the tomatoes and peppers here were started later. Then, the peppers aren't quite the size, obviously, but the tomato plants took off. They like having a lot of room for surface roots to run out. And the bigger the root systems, the more growth you're going to get. But I want to leave you with this, that, again, I'm going to stress. This works. I've done it for years. You just don't need to overgrow them. And if you grow a really big plant in something like this, and then you put it out into the garden, it's going to be a while before the root system catches up. So the whole strategy to get tomatoes, sooner to the table, harvest sooner, is to really have a nice sized container, large root system for your transplants indoors. They're going to grow more quickly. They're going to get larger. You don't have to hold them indoors as long. With a nice root system going out into the right temperature soil, I'll teach you how to do that if you want to follow me. Getting into that 65 Fahrenheit, 18.3 Celsius soil, top 2-4 inches, which would be 5-10 centimeters. I have to do that in my head real quick. Really will allow these plants to accelerate, speed up growth, and you're going to get tomatoes sooner. But if you grow in these smaller containers, you're growing 8 or 10 weeks, the roots are getting bound, you put them out early into cold soil, you're not really doing yourself a favor. You're just doing more work indoors, and you're not going to get a harvest sooner. So you want to get the timing right, you want to get the container right, and you want to make sure the outdoor soil is at the right temperature. Thanks so much for watching. And again, look at the difference in the size, and we'll go from the top view too, so you can see the canopy. Thanks so much for watching. Please check out my seed shop at therustedgarden.com. Please check out my blog that will be very active come January. It's called therustedgardenblog.com. Again, thanks so much for watching.